So I like to be able to keep my introductions short so that you can tell me what it is that you want people to know about you. When you're meeting somebody here at Cannes who doesn't know you, maybe doesn't know what you do, what do you tell them about who you are and why you're here?
So I co-founded Vertigo Films 24 years ago, and we've been making lots of independent film and TV and distribution, etc., over the years, and producing Critterz, and we've also just announced a new company that we've set up called Amersia, which is creating the technology for AI native films, TV, branded content, etc.
Yeah, and I'm Chad Nelson. I'm a creative specialist at OpenAI. For my career, I've always been a creative director, but it's been really at that intersection between technology and entertainment. And so I think my experience at OpenAI is very much about that, is how do you use this technology to tell stories, to basically envision the worlds or the things that you have in your head. And Critterz is very much a reflection of that. And so it's exciting to basically be able to partner with James and bring that story to life.
And tell me about how the Critterz short came to be. Was it always intended as a proof of concept for a full-length feature, or was that something that just sort of evolved organically?
Yeah, I think what was interesting about that was I started working with OpenAI when DALL-E 2 was announced, and that was in April of 2022. So it was the first text-to-image generation system made available to the public. And what was interesting to me about that was this was the first time I had a system where you could literally just type in a thought, and in a few seconds you'd see it on paper. Very much like having a digital sketch pad to your mind. And at some point, I pitched OpenAI. Actually, it was September of that year. I pitched OpenAI and said, I think we can make a movie. And this was right around the time of TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival. And so I basically said, I have this idea that we can make this movie about these animals that talk, that are very much like a David Attenborough's Planet Earth that collides with a Monty Python sketch. They said, great, come in and pitch it on Monday. So I pitched it on Monday. By Friday, they funded the film. And we were basically off to make this thing. We had no idea how we were going to make it. So in many ways, the process was to just take this new tech and figure out how we could tell a story with it. And when James and I met in 2023, at the end and beginning 2024, it was less about how do we tell another short, but like how do we just take it to the next level? And I think that what you said is like, do you have an idea for a feature? And I said, well, I have this story kind of floating around, and so let's just go for it.
And what do you remember about your earliest days talking about Critterz?
So I got invited by Chad in February 24. So we decided to look into AI and get into it in the mid 2023. And in February 24, when we met with Chad and we all got on, I flew out to San Francisco because Chad had said, why don't you take a look at what we're building at OpenAI? And what they were building was this thing called Sora, which was their video generative model. And I brought with me a director friend of mine called Gareth Edwards, whose career we had launched with a movie called Monsters, and then he did his second movie was a film called Godzilla, and then Star Wars Rogue One. So he was quite kind of like, and he'd actually just had the call from Spielberg to say, do you want to do that little movie called Jurassic Rebirth? And we saw this technology, and all of us just went, oh, our whole worlds are about to change entirely. And Gareth joked, he said, I think I'm well aware of the irony that I've just been asked to make a movie with the word Jurassic in the title about old dinosaurs. So that was the beginning. And then we said to Chad, as he said, let's just go for a movie. Let's just go for a full feature. You've done the short way ahead of anyone else. Why don't we just get ahead and do a feature? And that became the movie, hiring the guys who wrote Paddington in Peru to do the script, and then realized that we didn't have the technology to be able to build it because no one's done it before. So we built a piece of tech to actually create it called Woven, and that's why we set up this new company, Amersia.
And what does that technology functionally do? What does it look like as part of a production pipeline on a feature?
So essentially, what we realized is that as great as the technology is that all of these models use, artists and filmmakers and storytellers still need an interface to be able to, communicate with each other and make the technology work for them. So because we've got a team of amazing artists and animators and storytellers, we needed to build something to basically say to them, listen, you know, here's a way that you can kind of like utilize what you're doing and integrate it with a video generative model. So it's essentially an interface, and it, you know, suddenly everyone realized that actually this is what is needed at the moment, because everyone's trying to work out how do you actually integrate AI storytelling into our workflows. And now we're, you know, testing it with some of the biggest media companies in the world now. So it's been quite a journey of learning.
Yeah, and to add to that, one of the things that we realized with Critterz is that we wanted to be able to own everything about it. The characters, of course, the script and the story, and the world itself. And because of that, we knew we had to have our talented artists not prompt by just typing in text prompts and then seeing those images come to life, but more so to feed the AI sketches, essentially, their own drawings, their own imaginative kind of characters and visions of these worlds, and then use that to guide the AI. So it basically is truly human authorship that then is being augmented by the AI to kind of bring it to life, but it would never actually exist without those sketches and those essentially all those illustrations feeding the system. So that was a big key part of the production workflow.
That was going to be one of my next questions, because people talk about Critterz as an AI-assisted movie, and that could mean a lot of different things. And I think one of the reasons why there's such fear around the use of artificial intelligence in filmmaking is because it's such a broad term. I'm curious, you know, when you set out to do this, where did you think you would use Gen AI tools in the production pipeline? Where did you actually end up using them, and how? And were there any things that you learned along the way, either things that worked especially well that you didn't anticipate, or things that you thought would work well with AI that ended up being easier to do the, you know, quote unquote old-fashioned way?
Yeah, I mean, look. It's I mean, I think the misconception about AI is that it does all the work for you. It doesn't. You need really great artists. You need great storytellers. You need great animators. You need people who understand, you know, the world that they're designing and creating. So I think the first point is you need great artists. And then the next part of it is kind of like, how can we utilize the technology to help those artists? And some of the people had worked with AI before, some of them hadn't. But all of them found how incredible it was that they're able to test and iterate their ideas incredibly quickly, so that they can go, okay, that worked, but that didn't. Let's try this. Let's play around with this. So the effect is that it essentially gives all of us in the process an incredible ability to work with the creativity of everyone else and actually try things, test things, see what we like, see what we don't like, work as a team. And you go through, you know, things, because it's a brand new technology, you go through things, as the designer said, it's the most frustrating as well as the most incredible experience he's ever had, because you have moments which are just like, okay, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working. And then you have others where it's like, oh my God, it's just done this for us. So it's very much about how it can kind of enable all of the designers, all of the people that work on the production, to kind of iterate and experience way faster than you would ever do. I mean, you know, it's going to take us maybe, I don't know, 9 months, and it would normally take about 3 years.
I was actually just talking to somebody about this earlier. Do you remember the whole thing, to put it mildly, with Sonic the Hedgehog? When the original design got out and people just ripped the studio to shreds, and they actually went back and fixed it and remade the movie, which I think some other studios might have made a different decision and got ahead with it, and it wouldn't have been a, you know, $1 billion+ franchise and working on movie, I think, number 4. But what occurred to me was how much faster you would come to that realization with technology like this. Surely, if it wasn't something you had been working on for years and years and years, if it's something you had been, you know, ideating on, and somebody in the room would have had the guts to be like, guys, he looks like he got run over by a car, like, we should do something different.
Yeah, no, it very much so, in that I like to say that these tools allow you to explore the 50 ideas that you have as opposed to the 5 that you would normally have the availability to explore. And so what I hope with these tools it allows you to do is essentially improve and enhance your creative to work through all the either risky options or the experimental options to get to that thing that actually makes it the best solution or the best idea that you can get on paper or on screen. And so to me, I mean, if I only know I have in the X amount of time the ability to draw, like, say, 10 sketches and present those to the producers or the director, okay, I'm going to probably take 3 and make those, okay, these are going to be really confident, these will be a little less confident, these will be a little bit more risky. But what if I could really explore a lot more ideas in that same amount of time? That's what these tools allow. And I think that's what's been so exciting for the part of the process is that the character designer, for example, his first movie was Space Jam. And he's telling us stories about how long it took him to get just from his sketches to see the very first example of it. And then he'll tell stories about more recently with 3D. And it will, from his sketch to seeing the actual 3D model animated, might be 6 weeks to even longer. And we're showing him his characters animated in literally the same afternoon. And I think that's where, he can immediately go, oh, no, that's not how I was thinking about it. I was really wanting it to move like this. And he could change that sketch immediately. So I just find it's a lot more intuitive and interactive, if you will, in terms of that creative process, because you're not waiting for the process to, in a way, keep up with your creative exploration.
Can you just sort of walk us through practically how the artists are involved after that point?
So after that point.
Yeah, so they've worked on the sketch, they've seen it animated using the technology, they've given feedback. Like, how do you balance the human creativity with the technological tools, from that point on?
In the same way that you would on any production. So, the designer is over everything to do with the look of it, and the characters, everything to do with the look of the characters. So how they move, how they walk, all that kind of stuff, and the director. So it's almost identical in the sense that you've got the same team basically being involved in the process and what they like and what they don't like. It's just a lot quicker. So we've got our designers over everything, over every kind of all the choices that are made, and is able to. In a usual situation, if the designer went, well, look, we haven't quite got that right, we've got to spend another 2 weeks or so kind of like trying it out, we can try something out that afternoon. And then it's like, oh, okay, no, that's cool, I can see what you mean, etc. So everyone's still involved in the same way, but just there's just a speed of, to Chad's point, the immediacy of the creative process is really thrilling, and we can take risks. And for me, as someone who comes from the independent sector, what I'm really loving about it is the risk-taking that we can all do. So creatively, you can just, there are no limits. So you're able to just go, okay, let's really, really push this and see what we can do to create something super original. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is it good? Because if we don't do that, then it doesn't matter what technology we used.
But it's interesting because as much as the film is described as an animated feature, I would say it's not like directing animation at all, because it's not a 3D engine. It's not where I can design a perfect camera move and rig a character on a skeleton and animate them like I would in a traditional, say, Pixar or DreamWorks film. This is actually much more like live action disguised as animation. You still have to, you block a scene, the director will place the characters and the location and light it, and then they have to describe to the AI how they want the scene to unfold. And it's very much like a director saying, okay, you're gonna do this, the camera's gonna move here, you're gonna do this, and then you say action and you generate it, and you realize that if it didn't do what you thought, it's because you didn't articulate it well enough. So then you do it again, and you then learn, oh, I need a little bit more description here, or I need to really be specific about this. And so you might go through 30, 40, 50 takes. And that's why I say it's like live action, because it's not like, again, working in 3D. It's very much like you have to articulate to your crew, or all these little AI characters, what you want them to do. And so they call it the art of prompting. But to me, it's just like being a director on a live action set. It's like, how are you prompting your cinematography crew, your actors, your extras, et cetera, to do that thing that you have in vision for the shot?
Darren Aronofsky said something at the AI summit across the street earlier today about people underestimating how labor intensive this is for the humans involved, that like the tech isn't there for you to just type something in and have it do it for you if you want to make something good. And that was the key word in that thought was if you want to make something that is, high caliber, that people are going to enjoy watching and may not know in the end the tools that were made to use it, it's a lot of work. And I'm curious, how sort of that perception from people at home playing around with the bare bones version of these tools has impacted, like your conversations.
I think, look, it's a really good point. I mean, this happened when Toy Story came out with something that at the time was called computer-generated animation. And everyone went, what the hell's this? And it's going to destroy the animation business, and the rest is history. Because the only thing that mattered in the end was Toy Story a good movie? And it was a great movie. So that thing about kind of like, what's the target? The target is still, you make something great, whereby in the first 30 seconds of Toy Story, was any of us thinking about the technology? We were just going, God, this is cool, and these characters are amazing, and Woody's incredible, etc. And I think the same kind of thing with this technology. We're not going to be having these conversations in, I don't know, a year's time, maybe 2 years' time. No one's going to care. It's going to be in the way that no one kind of talks about the CGI or the VFX unless it's like specifically bad. No one notices it. And I think the same thing with this technology is that, as storytellers, you don't want people talking about the technology ever. You want people to be talking about the story and the filmmaking and the quality of it. If they're talking about the tech, then you've made a boring movie.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason why we have this term AI slop. And it's because I think there's just a lot of lazy creative that's being produced in mass. And if your LinkedIn feed or your Instagram feed's like mine, it's just filled with things that you're just like, these are unmemorable. They're really not even worth watching. And so I think what's interesting to me also is there's a whole group in the AI community that also focuses on how fast I can make something. Oh, I made this in 48 hours, or I made this, and they'll have film festivals, like the 48-hour film festival. I think that's the wrong thing to celebrate. It shouldn't be about how quickly you can make disposable content. It should be far more about how you can make something memorable and then emotionally hit you. And that takes time. Storytelling takes time. Writing a good script takes time. And I just think we haven't seen that level of effort outside of things like Darren's company and a few others. But it's been very few that have actually taken that time to develop those stories to say, let's really put this and craft this into a narrative that is memorable and worth watching. And I just think, we just got to get past this scrolling kind of doom scroll mentality.
What kinds of questions have you gotten from filmmakers about your work on Critterz and about the process along the way?
I mean, I think it's kind of interesting. So Cannes last year, I remember thinking, and I've done, 25 of these, something like that. So I remember kind of last year just looking out to sea at the very, very large wave that was called AI, and realized that no one was really acknowledging it on the Croisette. And I was going, that's a little strange, because it's on its way. This year it's a very different vibe, and the conversations have been incredibly positive and much more about how can I use it? What should I be doing? What can we do to incorporate it? And it's much more been, as it should be, artist-led and storyteller-led, which is, okay, this is a new tool, I don't quite understand it, I don't quite understand the tech, but I've got these stories to tell, is there a way I can do it? And one of the things it does is it allows people to kind of make films creatively that they would never ever be able to make in the normal structures. And that for me is something to celebrate, because we need that kind of risk-taking creativity now.
Yeah, and I would say for myself, as someone that works at OpenAI, 2 years ago, all of our conversations had to be in the shadows. Like, we couldn't even acknowledge that we were talking to a studio. Now, I think every studio is at least announcing or acknowledging they're exploring AI, they're figuring out what it can do for their processes, and either it will be a short or a feature or something, but I think everyone is now starting to openly discuss it.
And so you said earlier, when you're talking about tech, specifically VFX, nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to know how the sausage is made. Nobody brings it up unless it's bad. You're on the forefront of something new, and Critterz is, one of the poster children for AI in Hollywood. I'm curious if you're embracing that role of involuntary stewards of AI in Hollywood, or if you wish people would take that sort of approach of not talking about the tech and just looking at the film.
I think it's a good question. It's a weird position to be in, to be honest with you, because you kind of like, as we're like sitting in this place where, you know, I've spent all my career in the traditional indie world, and I'm kind of like very much in this new world, so can see the future and where it's headed. I don't think there's any role of kind of official role. We certainly that will be judged by the public. It's certainly nerve-wracking because you kind of know that you are at that forefront. But I think that, you know, I'd like to think that the thing that's important to me as a filmmaker is that I come from the filmmaking community and the independent community, and that really matters to me. So those people, those teams, those storytellers, those artists, you know, they're part of who I am and how I am as a producer. So what we're doing, I hope, is we've got to make a great film. That's literally, it doesn't really matter. If we don't, then all of these conversations are irrelevant. But I think the other part of it is wanting to be able to show the independent community and the studio community, I mean, to be, you know, the filmmaking and TV world, that these are tools that are going to be really useful to you. And that for me is I guess the message. I hope that we can tell.
Yeah, when we did the short, we premiered it at Annecy in 2023. And when they first invited me to show it, I actually declined because I'm like, I'm just going to go and take arrows and pitchforks from the entire community. And I'm like, why would I go do that? And then they invited me again about a month later, and I'm like, they're like, we really are excited. We're going to have a whole AI kind of lineup, and we really want you to be a part of it. So I came and went and showed the film. And what hit me was after the lights came on, it wasn't 7 minutes of standing ovation for Tom Cruise, the accolades you see here, but it was definitely at least 30, 45 seconds of applause, and there was laughter through the theater. And what hit me in the Q&A was there was a man that stood up and said, I came here just to this event to basically, tell you my mind and how awful I thought what you were doing is, but it was a funny movie. He's like, and I actually laughed. And what he realized is actually might have been my view in how I'm thinking about this that is wrong. And what you showed me is that actually it is a tool, and you put your soul into making this thing. And that's what I hadn't realized. And I think that's what hit me about where we will be when this film is finished and we premiere it, is that I think a lot of people will realize it is an AI-assisted film, whatever that means. But there's a lot of people, well, I should say a dozen or two in this case, but that are putting their heart and soul into making this. And it wouldn't happen if they weren't so talented and had the experience both artistically and in their own personal lives to be able to get that onto the screen.
All right, we are about at time, but I am curious to know what's next for you, for the technology. What do you have in the pipeline?
So we just need to get this one right first. But I think, look, I mean, we're starting to use it across our slate and across lots of films, and also with Woven, hoping that lots of people will be able to use it. I think it's just kind of embrace it and learn from it, and use it in live action and see how we can test it. I mean, my personal view is I think we're about to go through a period of seeing some of the most extraordinary creativity in the film and TV world that we've seen for years, because of what I said earlier, which is that people have never been able to do it. So I'm feeling very positive about it, and I think that I can't wait to see what people make with it.
Yeah, and I'll summarize with one of the things that we did in the early days of development. We went to the Disney Family Museum in San Francisco. And in walking through it, you see very early on a letter that Walt Disney wrote to his brother in basically the early 20s. And he said to Roy, I think I'm too late to get into animation. And this is, of course, before sound and color, and then Steamboat Willie, and then all the empire that he basically built. And you realize he was at the beginning of an era that changed entertainment history forever. And I see that we're in a very similar place right now where these new tools are going to emerge, and it's going to allow new storytelling, new storytellers, and new ways to experience entertainment that we just can't even envision yet. And I think that's what's going to be so exciting to come.
From the 1920s with Steamboat Willie to the 2020s with Critterz. What a place to end. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Chad, James, thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day.